Hi, this is Taryn Grome, editor of Pharma Voice. We met with numerous inspirational thought leaders at this year's DIA annual conference as part of our Editors Take video series. I hope you enjoyed this discussion.
In this episode, Taryn meets with Donald Dieso, PhD, Chairman and CEO, WIRB-Copernicus Group, and Edmundo Muniz, MD, PhD, CEO, Certara.
Gentlemen, welcome to Philadelphia and the annual DIA conference.
Nice to be with you, Taryn.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
What are some of the challenges you are seeing facing the pharmaceutical industry today?
Well, Taryn, I must tell you, it's one of the most exciting times in the decades in which I've worked in this industry. I don't recall a time when things have been as dynamic. Even the nature of the companies at this show today are just extraordinarily diverse, from subject enrollment companies to technology companies to service companies. I've watched Latin America, China, South Korea, New Zealand, Australia, all represented here. So it's globalizing, it's becoming more diverse. Very, very exciting times for our industry.
At the same time, facing significant challenges. As we know, we tend to focus on the cost of drug development, which we all know has achieved $2.5 billion of capitalized cost in probably a decade of 12 years of drug development. In addition to this, we're not doing drug development faster than we do it before. Only 1 out of every 10 drugs that reaches clinical trial makes it to the market, and 2 out of every 10 that makes it to the market do not only provide the cost or exceed the cost of drug development, become commercially successful. So it's a real challenge in terms of the productivity and the cost. In addition to this, the most significant challenge that we face today is that we used to think that filing a drug with an NDA was 80%, 90% of the goal of a drug development. We know that this is only half of the journey. The other half of the journey is what value that drug brings to the market. So the shift in focus from best in class to best in value is a critical challenge that needs to be met in the marketplace today for us to be successful.
How can we improve the odds of drugs making it to market? Then let's talk about how can companies improve the value, and what do we need to do as an industry to make sure we are providing that value back to the patients?
Sure, the cost of a drug today, and whether you recognize Tufts' estimate of $2.6 billion per drug, is really secondary. What is important is that of every dollar of R&D that the drug industry spends, only 10 cents results in a commercial drug. 90 cents leads to nothing. And so that equation can't continue. It's too expensive to develop drugs today, so measures that will have more science reflected in early stages. Certara is one of the leaders in doing biosimulation, which means letting the computer analyze the effect of a drug on an in silico person. Very helpful. Studying more carefully populations of those in disease states to be more narrow. Designing trials to be more successful by including or excluding the right group of patients. All of those ideas and many more are going to become part of the landscape. 90 cents that leads to nothing is not a sustainable business model. It can't go on, and it will not go on.
So by increasing the reliability and predictability of the key decisions that we make in drug development, that's how we are going to be able to improve the productivity. This is not a speed game only or a cost game only. By being able to do it right the first time, being able to select the right patient population, being able to understand the probability of success of a proof of concept and the probability of success of interactions with regulatory agencies, which are the two sides of the coin. By increasing those odds, bringing proper scientific approaches and technologies, that's the way we're going to be addressing that. Certara, as you know, is the global leader in modeling and simulation, and from discovery to NDA filing, we bring pharmacokinetic, pharmacodynamic, quantitative system pharmacology, clinical trial design that address the issue of how intelligently we address those core decisions as opposed to how fast or how cheaply we address them.
Both of your companies endeavor to accelerate patient access to innovative medicine safely. How are you going about that?
Well, you're right in pointing out the challenge. You know, the most telling number for me is less than 3% of those individuals in the United States with cancer actually enroll in clinical trials associated with cancer cures. There's something underneath that this entire industry, we all need to understand and take apart. It may be that they're not properly, these subjects are not informed. It may be that their physicians are not making them aware. Physicians may not know of trials that are underway. So for us, that final gap is connecting physicians to ongoing clinical trials, which in turn go to subjects. Now, you may have read a number of the things, I know you've covered a number of our things, in which we are volunteering at no cost to do compassionate use approvals for those people in the final stages of a fatal condition, when they're going to get access to an experimental drug and IRBs have to approve it. This is what we need. There's something not right, and we need to understand it. And I don't think the answer doesn't lie only in big data. The answer doesn't lie in just putting a lot of things under one database thinking that the cure. Something is preventing people from volunteering for clinical trials. We need to understand it, we need to fix it.
At the heart of the dignity of a patient is to understand that each patient is an individual. And as an individual, he has individual characteristics, biological characteristics, physiological characteristics, diseases operating human beings in completely different ways. So scientific disciplines and companies that are able to identify the variabilities between individuals and that can bring that variability to the proper way in which we develop drugs. So instead of all size fits all, or the small, medium, large sizes being the model that we use across the world, we not only identified sub-patient populations that are very reliable in terms of efficacy and safety, but also we treat the individual patient with name and last name, hence increasing the possibilities of drugs being successful, in increasing the probability that toxicity is not present in those patients. 40 to 50% of the doses of drugs that are approved are wrong. And those drugs are used in the marketplace every day. So these disciplines such as modeling and simulation will have a tremendous impact in the way we rethink the way we develop drugs and the way we fix the challenges of the healthcare system.
How are you working together to expedite this process?
Well, we are delighted, and we work very closely together as two companies in this area. Certara leads the world in discovery and preclinical, and WCG picks up at the clinical stage when we're moving to phase 1 and phase 4. That's one big continuum of activity, and so we are coordinating and organizing so that these are not silos, but are just one big assessment of information. How can we make that? So that's certainly one of our critical commitments to the field.
And one area where we join forces together are in the areas where we are treating and dealing with special populations. They are by nature rare diseases. Populations are not large in quantities. In fact, there are sometimes patient populations that are untestable, neonates. There are ethical issues that are involved in the way you approach drug development. So by selecting the right clinical trial design that is ethical and it is sound, but by being able to use the disciplines that can actually do the drug development without even touching a patient, we can turbocharge the speed at which many of those accelerated approvals, orphan drug designations, which are, or fast track designations that are regulatory routes that speed that process, preserving again the dignity and the quality of the data that we extract and use for patients' drug development.
Precision dosing is determining the right drug dose for the individual patient instead of the group. How do you see this type of prescribing occurring in routine clinical care?
This is not in the future, this is here. In fact, although the large proportion of the world still uses medicine as a one-size-fits-all, particularly in developing countries, that's the way drugs are used. So even the concept of sub-patient population has not been ingrained in the way we treat patients, Certara and WCG are committed to understanding how we can, through understanding the individual characteristics of patients, whether it is in the way you respond to the drug or the drug makes your body respond to you, or your genetic polymorphisms or changes that the environment has placed on your genetics. Those are all dimensions that modeling and simulation takes into consideration to be able to address the dosing to the individual patient. Just 2 months ago, Certara called for a global summit on precision dosing. This was an internal Certara activity where we brought hospital administrators, regulatory agents, and key opinion leaders in that area, and we presented 15 case studies where we demonstrated on preliminary basis how our technologies and services can optimize dosing at the point of care with significant impact on safety and efficacy.
We see a considerable number, as you know, of the clinical trials that go on every day. And here's hope. The number of protocols that are coming in that are now finer and finer focused are just incredible. So going back years ago when you'd have huge populations for hypertension or diabetes, it was very large, almost indiscriminate number of people involved. Today, these protocols are now asking for genetic screening information. The exclusion criteria get narrower and narrower, and that's a good thing because it's permitting us to look at that 1 inch closer to precision dosing, and it is quite encouraging to see.
Great news, by the way. Regulatory agencies are at the forefront of that process. Certara over the last 18 months have trained over 200 FDA and regulatory individuals. Regulators have embraced these technologies and services to make a deeper analysis of the requirements for drug development and ask very tough questions that pharmaceutical companies on behalf of patients will have to be able to answer.
What are some of the remaining challenges that need to be overcome to figure out a sustainable model?
It might surprise you when I say I'm not sure it's on the science. I think the most profound challenge is organizational behavior. Whether it's sponsors or CROs, there are such ingrained practices in how it's been done decade after decade. And by the way, what's most reinforcing is those behaviors led to successes historically. So it's hardest to change cultures when the past have actually rewarded those behaviors. But we're at unprecedented times now. It's needless to say, globalization is defining this in ways that we've never seen before. And so many of those who have the longest experience, if they don't understand that and become willing participants in change, they're going to become the lodestones against which change is going to be challenged. So I'd say first, witness the fact that large pharma finds it actually more effective to buy the young companies and buy the products of that young company, creative and agile thinking, than do it themselves. So I put on the top of my list, we have a lot of culture change in all of the participants.
And in consequence, the business model. So the new blockbuster is not going to be this drug that works in 100% of the patients, that is aiming for a large market and peak sales. The new blockbuster is a drug that is able to address a very well-defined patient population where the predictability and reliability of the safety is very high and where toxicity is very small, that payers will be excited to reimburse because it represents a true advancement in efficacy and safety, and patient really can derive an extraordinary benefit from that. That's the new era.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you for sharing your insights today.
Taryn, it's been an absolute pleasure as always. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
For more information on this topic, visit our Thought Leaders website.
For more Editors Take Videos from the DIA Annual Conference, visit www.pharmavoice.com. Thanks for joining us.